BMW Motorcycle Owners of America present the Short Wheelbase Podcast. With members in all 50 states, Canada, and across the globe, the BMW MOA invites you to ride inspired. Learn more about membership benefits, including roadside assistance, tire hazard protection, and more at bmwmoa.org. The Short Wheelbase Podcast is also brought to you by Boxer 2 Valve, supplier of quality OEM and aftermarket parts and specialty tools, and by Air Support BMW, offering premium driveline rebuilding and performance enhancements for your air-cooled BMW.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 14 of the Short Wheelbase Podcast. As always, Nick and Darren here. How you doing today, Darren?
I'm quite well. Thank you, Nick.
Good. You've got your hair out again. Hat's been removed. Did you go to the stylist before?
The rain stylist. It's raining here. Yes.
Gotcha. I'm in desperate need of a haircut, which is why I will continue to wear a hat and kick that can down the line. Anyway, it is the 14th episode, and this episode is slated to go out on the 14th of the month, March 14th, which is 3/14, which I thought was interesting. It's also an interesting date for me. It is my wife's birthday, and this date is always ingrained in my brain because it is Pi Day, 3.14. I'm not going to try to rattle off the rest of them.
Nerd alert.
Yep, exactly. I don't know. I thought that was fun. And I went down a Google rabbit hole before recording today to try to find some kind of tie between motorcycles and the pi number. And I didn't find anything, but I did stumble across a ton of the Vitruvian Man drawings, which was done by Da Vinci. He was trying to yes, he was trying to square the circle. It's the one where his arms are out around the circle. I saw a ton of motorcycle themed t-shirts and stickers and things like that with the Vitruvian Man, and it got me thinking I should probably do an Airhead Misfits sticker or shirt like that. So if anybody's interested in that, jump in the comments, let me know. I'll design something and maybe I can make a few dollars. Or not.
Pretty sure the copyright on that photo is expired, or on that drawing is expired.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think anyone's coming after me on that one. So anyway, that's the nerd alert. That's the nerd update, 3.145 something. I'm not sure. We're going to jump into garage updates first, and then we're going to talk about the featured bike of the week, which is a Misfit bike. It's a cool one. It's probably one of the more Misfit appropriate bikes that I've actually brought to the table. It's a 72 R75/5 short wheelbase.
Very good.
With a R100/7 motor crammed into it, a high pipe. Oh, it's so cool. We'll get into that.
Purpose built.
We'll get into that in a minute. And then we have a clip of Bob from Bob's BMW talking about how he got into the business, and it's kind of a precursor to some of the longer audio podcast episodes that are coming that are related to that as well. But first, Darren, what do you have going on in the garage?
Nick, I'm happy to report no wrenches turned since we last spoke. I guess that means everything is copacetic and well with the rolling stock in the garage at my house. I did get a little riding in between the last time we spoke and today. So the green machine's doing well. Awesome. Nothing of note to report there. As far as what's going to happen in the garage, really all I've got on my short list is to get the 77S I bought out in San Clemente, sort of get that back up to snuff. It's going to need some new steering head bearings, fork rebuild, and some tires.
Cool.
So that will happen later at some point. I've kind of had a busy winter with the green machine, so I'm ready to just kind of put the wrenches down for a little bit, maybe enjoy some riding for a while, not stress out or work on any kind of bikes, and I'll get to that when I'm ready. So pretty quiet.
Sounds great. Yeah, as you can see, I'm back in the garage.
You are.
As last episode, I was in the house because the garage was filled with the 4Runner project. That has been completed, cleared out. It took all manner of grinders and sawzalls and heat and force to get that job done, but it is done. My garage still smells vaguely of transmission fluid, which is unfortunate, but that will clear out in time. And so now I have finally some space to work on bikes again, and I'm hoping to get the conversion up on the stand in the next week or so here, to finally get to that starter that I need to replace and just do some general maintenance, fluid change, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully by the next time we talk, I'll be into those projects.
So that's the big thing on the Convo bike is the starter.
Yep. It's struggling to get the bike going. So
battery's okay.
Battery's testing fine. Yeah, that starter's just been kind of suspect since I bought it, and I've got one on the shelf. So need to get it in there, and hopefully we can have a good spring as that's fast approaching.
That's a pretty simple operation.
Yeah, not too worried about that one, but just needed space to get to it.
All right, fair enough. And then what about your Box O bike?
Box O bikes. Yeah, that I'm going to start pulling out as well, and start cataloging and inventorying what I do have. I think I have about 90% of a bike there, so I need to figure out what I'm missing and just generally come up with my plan of attack on that one. But in the meantime, I want to get the conversion ready to go, so that way when I'm not feeling like turning the wrench, I can at least go ride a bike.
Indeed.
So looking forward to that. It'll be much simpler than working on a car.
Yes.
So yeah, we'll move along here into the featured bike of the week. This week we are doing an Airhead Misfit from my Instagram page. For those who don't know, find me on there at Airhead Misfits, and you can submit bikes to me. I'll send you a free sticker or two for your time. I feature those bikes every other Friday. This is a bike that I actually just got yesterday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm going to feature it this week. It'll actually be out on the Instagram page before this episode airs. But I wanted to squeeze this one in ahead. It kind of jumped in line because the gentleman who sent it to me is having some issues with his transmission.
Uh-oh.
And he was hoping that I could share what's going on, and maybe we can get the brain trust engaged to help him out a little bit. But first,
all right. So we're going to start out with the transmission problem first, or just talk about the bike?
Let's just talk about the bike first and get everyone acquainted with this thing.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll pop some pictures up here as I go. But this is the user is this is Jess. So Jess's bike is a 1972 R75/5 short wheelbase, like I mentioned earlier. It has an R100/7 motor crammed into it, which is awesome. And it's running a GS final drive, GS bars. He's added some protection elements. He's got a slow enduro skid plate, leg shield, and luggage bracket for his adventures. And these are his words exactly. She makes my favorite sounds, and I regularly redline this bike. It's wonderful.
Good.
So this thing gets ridden. It's purpose built with the high pipe and all that for, scrambler work, off-road work. It was a project bike that he had been working on for a few years, and he got the crew over at Boxerworks to kind of help him wrap it up and get it out onto the road. And since then it's taken some pretty serious adventures. He's taken it on Baja, on the Upper Peninsula, as well as some off-road trips with Athens 100 and Vintage 1000. And here's where the issue with the transmission kind of starts.
Okay, let's hear.
So during his Baja ride, he hit a hidden rock while riding through some sand. He broke the rear brake linkage. He bent the brake pedal, and he even broke his toe inside of his boot when this happened.
Okay.
Some quick roadside repairs with some of the people on the ride. And he got it back together and was able to finish the ride, and it continued to perform pretty well. Except he's having this intermittent issue with first gear. So sometimes the bike experiences like a slipping or a popping out of gear sensation when he first launches the bike in first. He says it's especially obvious when there's no weight on the bike. So I guess like if he's standing up on the pegs or something like that, or in the sand where there's a little bit of slippage happening. He says that this issue is persisting despite having the gearbox rebuilt twice by the guys at Boxerworks. I believe Nathan actually was the one who rebuilt the transmission twice. And so he's starting to think that because it only happened in first gear, that it's something drivetrain and it's not the clutch, it's not the transmission, at least he suspects. He's suspecting the drive shaft, especially given that the problem seems more noticeable when riding over rocks or sand. So like I said, I told him that I'd shed some light on this. I'm going to maybe, when I post on the Instagram page, I'm going to mention a few folks that, we know, see if anybody can chime in, some of the experts out there, the gurus, if you will, and try to get some buzz around this and figure out what's going on. I'm not inherently a transmission expert. That's a part of the bike that, if anything, kind of baffles me. So this is certainly not a problem that I've experienced or can speak on. But the one thing I want to just throw out there, that I had a thought of earlier, is, if I remember correctly, the drive shafts in the GS bikes and the later model bikes have some sort of like a spring or something in there.
Yeah, kind of like a cush drive. That's right.
Cush drive.
Good point. Yes.
That's the only thing that could come that came to my mind that could be giving him a problem. If the transmission's been rebuilt twice, I feel like we can probably assume that's okay. And if he doesn't believe it's the clutch, I'm kind of at a loss for what else it could be. So if anyone out there has any thoughts, Darren, do you have any?
I don't. I'm really bad. Sorry about that. I'm a horrible diagnostic mechanic. So I don't want to speculate. Your intuition there, though, is a good one. You're right. So we're going to, now here's the thing, though. So he says he has GS 81 on final drive, and I'm assuming that's bolted to the swing arm and drive shaft as well. So
that's my understanding.
All right. Because I don't know if you could just slap on a GS final drive onto a /5 swing arm. Maybe right. So. I don't know. I've not done that. These bikes are Lego kind of plug and play with a ton of parts. But I just don't know the interchangeability there. You could be correct on that. In fact, one thing that comes to mind is that when I spoke with Rick Jones at Motor Rod Electric, he has a /5. It might be his, I believe, that he put a later model swing arm drive shaft final drive on that he loves. He said the power delivery is a lot smoother. I've never tore into one of those drive shafts. I mean, on our bikes, especially the pre-81s, drive shafts are almost just put oil in it and right. Really don't think about it, right?
Yeah, especially if you're not abusing them. If you're just driving them on the road, it's not even a wear part, really.
Yeah, gosh, that's true. I think you might be onto something with that. As you say, the transmission's been rebuilt twice, and he says he's experiencing this more at particular times or differently when he's on the bike, riding the bike, and things like that. So, yeah, who's really good at these kind of troubleshooting things without much information? I've always thought is Bud Proven. BMW wrench on Adventure Rider. He always seems to chime in with a 2-sentence answer, and yeah, that's it. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm gonna jump on ADV Rider after this and maybe throw up a thread and a question, or maybe just message him directly and see if I can get some information flowing. Because it sounds like kind of an annoying problem, especially
that's frustrating.
Especially if you've rebuilt the transmission twice. That's no small undertaking. So that's kind of a shame that that's not working out.
Well, let's just say, though, that aside, the bike, I love a good purpose-built bike like this. The great thing about this kind of motorcycle is you're not really concerned about the paint, where you ride it. I noticed he had it on one of those, not a motorcycle carrier on the back, on the tow hitch, which I can't imagine putting any motorcycle I own on one of those.
Yep.
That would be heart attack inducing at every bump and every moment. But, when you've kind of got a bike like that, not saying he doesn't care about it or anything, far from that. But, you're a little less worried about off-roading it, and just, it's along for the ride, and it's ready for whatever. That's what this thing looks like.
Yeah, that's that photo, not that photo specifically, but the bike on the back of his truck is kind of how I found him. There's a shop down in Colorado Springs, south of me, that I follow on Instagram, and they had posted a picture of his bike on the back like that, because he had driven out to Colorado to go ride in the mountains.
Oh, wow.
And he stopped there. I think he's buddies with some of the guys that work in that shop. And so he stopped there. I saw the photo and I thought, I got to talk to this guy. This bike is awesome.
Yeah.
So I found him on Instagram and reached out, and we've exchanged messages a couple times over the last couple months. And, he hit me up last week and said, hey, I need to figure out what's going on with this. Can you maybe send out the alarm or find someone? So
yes. All right. Well, we've turned on the bat signal, so to speak, to
Yep.
everybody out there.
Yep. The Airhead Brain Trust bat signal is out, and I will continue to keep that light on until I can at least get a lead here. So hopefully Jess will get you something going here. And if you have an idea what it might be, throw it in the comments, and we'll get that info back to him and try to get him situated.
And keep us posted, Jess. We want the follow up on this.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd love to know what it was, because it's going to happen to somebody else at some point. So, Anyway, like I said earlier, if you have a bike you want to share, hit me up on Instagram, and we'll get set up there and get you some free stickers for your efforts. Next up, we've got the clip for this week, which is a clip from Bob's BMW. And Darren, why don't you kind of set this up a little bit and talk about what's to come with Bob here?
Indeed. So the 247 episode that is out today is part 1 of a 2-part episode series we're doing with Bob Henig. He has released a video series. It's on his website, and I believe on the Bob's BMW or Bob's Motorcycle, I think his actual website, bobsmotorcycles.com. Anyway, it's a video series that has been launched that covers his extensive collection and museum. So over the next several months, they're going to be releasing videos every so often that cover the over 110, I believe, motorcycles in his collection. I thought I was doing pretty good with 5, but he's been in the business a while, so understandably he's collected a lot of these over the years. Anyway, so that those episodes, we're going to be going over some particular bikes in that series, so that's going to be fun. And what I wanted to do with our episode today is dig back into the archives. This program originally aired back in July of 2022, and the clip we're going to hear is kind of, in many ways, Bob Henig's BMW origin story in so many words.
Yeah, it's a cool story. I really enjoyed this one, and there's a little bit of a personal reason for this, but he mentioned in the story that his very first motorcycle was a 1972 Suzuki TS250. I'm assuming that he probably bought it fairly new, but that was also my very first motorcycle, which I bought very used.
Is that a 2-stroke, I presume?
Exactly. It's a 2-stroke 250 Enduro. Mine, and I'd love it if maybe he comments on this, or if he hears about this, I'd love to know what color his was. I'll pop up a picture of mine here, and it's this just absolutely early 70s obnoxious lime green with an orange graphic.
Love it. I love it.
That's why I bought the bike. I saw it and I just was like, that is so cool. And it's fun too, because he talks about how, he kind of started to adventure on it a little bit, went camping and things like that. And that's kind of what happened with me too. I was starting to kind of fall into those patterns with bikes, and quickly realized that a 250 2-stroke was just going to rattle me to death.
Indeed.
So I bought an Airhead.
There you go. Yeah. Well, yeah, as I mentioned, this is sort of his origin story. And so you'll be able to hear, you can go back and hear the full episode on this in the archive, just like the 2 episodes we've got in the next few weeks. Our original chat with Bob was very thorough. We covered a lot of different topics. It was also 2 episodes. So if you've not heard that, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. Or if you're getting ready to listen to Bob's episodes on his museum and collection, this is a nice little precursor, a little warm up to sort of get you reacquainted with him and why he's been a legacy dealer and such an important part of the community all these years.
For sure. And I'll go ahead and in the description below, I'll put the links to the original episodes. And then as the next 2 kind of roll out, I'll update the description so that all those links, all 4, will be down below. So depending on when you watch this, there'll be some number of links in the description for you.
There you go. Perfect.
Well, I think that's all we really have going today, Darren.
Indeed.
So like I said, links will be in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you know anything about first gear slipping a little bit, hop in the comments, let us know. We'd love to help Jess out. But until next time, see ya.
See you, Nick. We've teamed up with the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America to offer a special membership deal for our listeners. Now, before you think, wait a second, Darren, how much is this going to cost? Let's just stop right here and say it's free. This is a complimentary 1-year digital membership for Airhead 247 podcast listeners. The MOA has a goal of adding 200 new members over the next several months. That's a lot, but I think they can reach that goal with our help. By supporting the MOA with this offer, you are also supporting this program. And let's say this again, it is free of charge. Visit 247.bmwmoa.org and complete the online form using the activation code Airhead247. That's easy to remember. You'll receive your free 1-year digital membership, and that will give our program credit for referring you. Or go to the description section of this podcast. We've got a direct link right there. Membership in the MOA offers discounts at hotels, a monthly magazine, great deals on roadside assistance programs, plus a fantastic network of BMW owners that share your passion. All this, plus you're supporting our efforts here with the podcast, bringing you unique insight into the world of the 247 Airhead. That website, once again, for your free 1-year digital membership, 247.bmwmoa.org. Use the code Airhead247. Thank you very much for your support.
Going back to the beginning of at least Bob's Used Parts, that all grew out of my introduction to BMW motorcycles by casual passing. When I was a little kid, long before I turned 13, one of my next door neighbors around the corner, his son, who was the wild kid in the neighborhood, had an old BMW R50 or R60. Could have been that or maybe an R50 R60/2. Wasn't an R69S because I've got a picture of him that his dad gave me. He used to go flying with his father years later, not knowing him when I was a kid. And he gave me this picture of his son riding his R50 or R60 off-road, and he is easily 4 or 5 feet off the ground, treating it like a dirt bike, but it's still in complete street dress. And so that was my first introduction to these cool motorcycles. I had friends that grew up with mini bikes. I had one too. Eventually in high school, my first year, one of my best friends' older brother had a Suzuki TS250. That's how the bike I learned to ride on, literally. And during the course of going through high school, I put more miles on that bike than the two of them combined, and eventually bought a brand new Suzuki TS250 when I graduated high school in 1972. During high school, one of my closest friends, his brother-in-law, was a member of the Hells Angels, but he was not your typical Hells Angels member. He was an artist, and he was an honorary member because he could build stuff out of metal, and he could paint. He could do all this stuff that not all those other people could. But he rode an R75/5 in 1971. And so Paul actually gave me my first ride on a BMW somewhere before I graduated high school, and ugly duckling that everyone called them back then. I was hooked. There was just something, maybe it was because it was different and I had a different car than everyone else in high school, or two actually, But I was hooked. I just liked the way they sounded, the way they looked. Paul had a big gas tank on his, and I liked that better than the small gas tank. And there was something about that, the way it hummed. And so after putting 20,000 miles on my little 250, using it more for traveling, it was sort of an extension of backpacking for me than for off-roading, even though I did a little bit of both. I went looking for my next motorcycle. It needed to be big. My friends were saying, you need something big so you can travel, Bob. And the dealer that I bought the Suzuki from was also a Honda dealer. And in 1976, there was this beautiful Honda 750/4 sport model that was really pulling at my heartstrings. And I think I could have afforded it. It was, right around maybe $1,800 to $2,200. I don't remember exactly. But the BMW is still digging a hole in the back of my head. And we had no BMW dealer in our close by region. I would have had to travel to the other side of Baltimore at the time. I think that was the closest place, or maybe down to Morton's in Fredericksburg, Virginia, which was 100 miles.
And Morton's is still open, by the way, we should say. Yep.
Morton's is still open. Jeff Massey, his wife Hannah, and many of their staff I've known for a very long time. Very good people.
Yeah.
And so I started looking around to see what was available used. And lo and behold, I find this 1972 R75/5 in Bethesda, Maryland, maybe 8 or 10 miles from where I lived at the time. And guy had moved from California a year earlier, not riding the bike. Long story short, I bought a bike for about $1,100 that was a bit neglected, had about 10,000 miles on it. The damage to the top of the gas tank and the seat never went away. It was parked under a crabapple tree in his backyard, even though he had a 2-car garage that wasn't full. I never understood that. But that was my introduction to BMWs, to the local, not club yet, but just people that rode them. I went out and bought a repair manual for the bike and started doing some of the basic maintenance and service. And the day I finally hit my first wall and I couldn't figure out how to do something, a woman who I was very friendly with in high school, I knew her dad had a BMW. I'd never met her dad. I'd never seen his motorcycle, but she always talked about it. And I called up Lisa and I said, who works on your dad's bike? And she said, I can't remember his name, but my dad stopped he used to run a painting business. He now owns a local Dunkin' Donut store. She said, go on up there, talk to my dad, introduce yourself, and I'm sure he'll hook you up. And so he hooked me up with a guy named Ed Sweeney, and I met dozens of people in this casual, informal BMW motorcycle gang. I call it a gang instead of a club because it was people my age and people old enough to be my grandfather. And I just got immersed in the BMW world. And then the next step was having my BMW parked out in front of a camera store that I managed for a couple of years. And one of my customers one day said, I got a BMW too, and do you know about the local club and all this other stuff? And lo and behold, in 1977 maybe, I went to my first local BMW rally thanks to Jeff, and then I went to the Four Winds Rally, and then I went to the National Rally in Vermont, and then I went to the Four Winds Rally in Pennsylvania, and the Finger Lakes Rally in New York. It was an epic year for someone that is sort of a solo traveler to all of a sudden be immersed in this BMW community, and it was fabulous. And so I was running my own home improvement business. I was a freelance photographer. I was a serial entrepreneur at that point in my life. But that set in motion something I didn't know that would take place until some years later.
Air Support BMW is a dedicated shop for air-cooled BMW motorcycles, offering high-end restorations and engine blueprinting for all models from World War II through 1995. Air Support offers expert mail-order component repair for transmissions, final drives, carbs, anything you can ship, they'll fix it. Air Support uses BMW OEM parts, factory tools, and brings years of experience to each job. And don't worry about shipping to Canada. Shipping rates are affordable and on par with other options. You can follow shop happenings, repairs, bike builds, all of George Thomas's racing exploits on Instagram as well. To schedule your next repair or to find out how George Thomas can help keep your 247 in good order, drop a line or give him a call. It's all there for you at airsupportbmw.com. One of the reasons so many airheads are still on the road today is because of great parts suppliers and enthusiasts like Boxer 2 Valve. William and Edward Plam at Boxer 2 Valve have years of experience with the 247 Airhead, dating back to their first repair shop and dealership in the early 1980s. Boxer 2 Valve stocks and sources only premium parts and tools, so no need to worry if you're getting a cheap pattern or shortcut part. They simply don't carry them. Boxer 2 Valve has extensively researched which parts are correct for your motorcycle. Just enter your year and model, and you'll see only the parts that fit your bike. That takes the guesswork out of the ordering process. Real-time stock information that is also available, so no need to guess what may be on back order that could delay your project. Also, if you're digging into a repair for the first time, be sure to check out Boxer 2 Valve's video repair series. These cover both twin shock and post-81 models and are great tutorials that go step by step through a variety of repairs and parts replacement procedures. The video series is a great workshop companion, one I've used many times over the years. So, for all your Airhead parts needs, Boxer2Valve.com. That's the number 2, Boxer2Valve.com.
In 1981, I crashed a hybrid R90S, R100S that I had built. Neither bike was bad to begin with. It was something a friend and I used to do in his garage, a guy named Larry Burstein. And we used to hang out at Larry's garage and do maintenance for other people and some modifications and just sort of pay for our hobby. And that incident put me in the hospital for a week, and my orthopedic surgeon and my doctor said, you should probably figure out something else to do besides the construction business and toting around an 80-pound camera bag because you did a lot of damage to your shoulder. And, in the hospital for a week, and then I'm recuperating at home. And the only other thing in my life that I really loved was motorcycles. And having gone to rallies for a number of years as an enthusiast and seeing a few people dabble in used parts and a few dealers showing up, I've met Chris Hodgson from San Jose, in their earliest days, and, we're still friends today. I saw an opportunity because nobody was really bringing any credibility. And there were lots of ads in the back of enthusiast magazines to buy this used part or that used part. But not a big clearinghouse or somebody who specialized in that per se. Literally nobody.
Yeah.
And what was going on the most was that people kept buying stuff that was supposed to fit their bike, but didn't fit their bike. Or they'd, answer an ad in the enthusiast magazine and I got this perfect gas tank on the shelf, and it would show up and it's got a dent in one side.
Yeah.
On and on with the horror stories. So the basic concept was that I would guarantee what I sold and how I sold it. And so this was long before the internet. The only way you could get a picture was to shoot a roll of 35 millimeter film and mail someone a picture.
That's right.
I guaranteed my description on the phone. If I spent 10 minutes on the phone with someone that was looking for a gas tank for a 1976 R75/6 in a particular color, and I said there is a nickel-sized dent 1 inch below the gas tank logo on the left-hand side, by God, when it showed up, that's what it was, and that's where it was. And we built a reputation of providing great customer service, and Bob's Used Parts was born. The amusing part was that the first rally I went to, I borrowed my now wife's, but at the time barely girlfriend's father's 200,000-mile Chevy van to load up all the stuff I had bought at that point in time.
Wow.
And so Bob very quickly buying and selling used parts, the dismantling of perfectly good motorcycles and the occasional neglected, damaged, or even crashed motorcycle. I quickly learned that in order to sell somebody the right side fork leg so they could turn their R90/6 into a dual disc bike, and the list is endless after that. They need new gaskets and seals and a whole bunch of other stuff, new brake pads. And so I started snooping around, and turns out there were probably 100 different people in the United States prior to my coming up with Bob's Used Parts that had been a BMW dealer at one time or another from the mid-'50s up until the early '80s. And while some of these places were, some of these dealers are obviously still around, most had closed their doors. Some had just put the stuff in the back room because they went on to other businesses, other brands, all that stuff. And I just started doing basic research, going back and looking at all the old dealer directories that ever existed.
Wow.
Back to when they were first published, because they used to come with a motorcycle, and just started tracing everyone down. And I eventually probably bought 65 or 70 dealer inventories, and ended up with a lot of new old stock parts, which helped in the early days supply that stuff. But gaskets and seals and some other stuff only last so long. BMW used to package all their parts in these glassine envelopes, and nuts and bolts and piston rings and a whole bunch of other critical parts would rust in those bags. It was bad technology. They thought, hey, someone will get this, they'll sell it right away, there's no issue. But in fact, sitting on a shelf in maybe a less than humidity-controlled dealership, things died early deaths. Rubber disintegrated in bags. So I was looking for other sources. The very first dealer that wholesaled me parts was Morton's BMW.
How about that?
I used to be a retail customer of those before I got into the used parts business. So, we go way back. I outgrew them very quickly because they were in a Quonset hut, and I was ordering more parts from them, or from BMW through them in a month than they were ordering in a quarter. And so I had to move on to somebody else. The dollar and the Deutschmark exchange rate was heavy to us. I started making contacts in Germany because I was going there for a lot of flea markets to find rare bits and pieces for old and new motorcycles, and started importing hundreds of thousands of dollars of new inventory every year from Germany to supplement the used parts business, because what I discovered back then is that there was, with the exception of BMW Motorrad St. Louis, the original operation, there was nobody really in the business of selling people parts over the phone, by fax, mail order in its earliest days, with the exception of Capital Cycle, which Ted worked at and grew out of a messenger service
That's
owned
right.
by a lawyer.
Yeah, that's right.
So all the mixed history is quite interesting.
Yeah,
So,
and let me jump in there and say, there's some timing there and some good fortune mixed with a bad fortune, I guess. And just reflecting on the story you told me there, the motorcycle crash in its own way was sort of an impetus to get you started.
absolutely.
Yeah, and then secondarily, the timing aspect of everything, when you got into this, it just so happened, there were a number of dealers, either, as you mentioned, their doors were closed or they didn't have any further interest or what have you, and you were able to go out and it sounds like a prime time, get a lot of that new old stock or used stock inventory. It's real similar to what happened with the record collectors, 78 record collectors in the late 60s and 70s. I had a friend, Richard Height, whose brother Bob Height was in Canned Heat. And they used to, of course, travel around the U.S. all the time. And they were sort of the right timing. They would just go through little towns, go to record flea markets and record shops and what have you. And they just amassed a wonderful collection of old blues and folk music 78s at the time. And it was one of those cases where the timing was right and everything just worked out. And that sounds to be sort of the case with you there. So kudos.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And it was fun. I mean, there were long trips and sweaty days, and filth and all the other stuff, but there were treasures to be found.
Thanks for joining us on the Short Wheelbase Podcast, presented by the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America. To join the club, visit bmwmoa.org. You can find full-length episodes of the excerpts heard here on the Airhead 247 podcast. The Short Wheelbase Podcast is produced and edited by Nick Malozzi, audio segments by Jeff Glover. You can check in with Nick at Airhead Misfits on Instagram.